Motion denied. Judge Penney Azcarate issuing an order denying all of Amber Heard's post-trial motions. Heard had wanted the judge to set aside the verdict because she said it didn't comport with either the law or the evidence in the case. I'm Angenette Levy, and welcome to this edition of Law&Crime's Sidebar podcast. This order was very interesting. It just came out from Judge Penney Azcarate on Wednesday afternoon, and she said that defendant Amber Laura Heard's post-trial motions 1 through 6 are denied for the reasons stated on the record. And these motions really had to do with Amber Heard saying, look, this verdict wasn't fair because of this reason or that reason, and the damages awarded by the jury were out of line, etc. But Judge Azcarate just issued one sentence. Defendant Amber Laura Heard's post-trial motions 1 through 6 are denied for the reasons stated on the record. And that has to do with that June 24th hearing in which the judgment in the case was ordered, and Judge Azcarate was very clear that she was signing the judgment. It would be final that day, and that was it. I was actually there for that hearing, and there weren't any cameras allowed. So that's how the judge, that's what the judge said about it, and that's how she acted. Judge Azcarate also denied issues having to deal with Amber Heard's claim of Juror 15 serving on the jury incorrectly or improperly. Amber Heard's team had filed a motion saying that a man who was born in 1945 actually was summoned for jury duty, but another man, likely his son, born in 1970, who had the same name and the same address, was actually the person who showed up for jury duty. And guess what? Judge Azcarate is saying, we pulled the jury summons. No birth date was listed on it. So this man went through the proper voir dire vetting process. And so there's no error here. And also, Judge Azcarate says that Amber Heard didn't show any prejudice as a result of this issue. So joining me to break this down is Mitra Ahouraian. She's an entertainment lawyer, but she's also a litigator. Mitra, welcome back to Sidebar.
Thank you, Angenette.
Your reaction to Judge Azcarate denying basically very quickly all of Amber Heard's motions?
Not surprised at all. With respect to the first several motions that were heard on the record, those were really trying to relitigate everything that we already heard in this 6-week trial, from things like actual malice. Was actual malice proved, or the amount of damages? All of this stuff was addressed in these 6 weeks. So that attempt to relitigate did not go well with the judge. The argument about this juror number 15 was so tenuous, if it even was an argument at all. And it was just a really short part of the motions, the post-trial motions that they brought. And even in that motion, her lawyers sort of admitted that, well, we know the onus was on us, but there was still an issue here. And so that's really what it came down to, was not only did they, have these 6 weeks to figure this out. They had the entire period of voir dire to ask all the questions that they wanted to ask. The juror actually filled out the questionnaire properly, stating the proper birth date. So they had access to that. And you have to preserve the objections that you're going to have during the trial. How did they not know until after the verdict was called that this was going to be an issue? But really, it really just comes down to the fact that the statute says that, one, any false information about a juror cannot be grounds for a mistrial, and two, that the onus is really on the parties to make sure that everything is looked at, and it's really their job.
This episode of Law&Crime's Sidebar podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, we've all had a time in our lives where we went through something really painful, and it might have helped to talk with a neutral third party about it. I know that really helped me when I lost my dad. You have to take care of yourself both physically and emotionally, of course, and there is some help for that online. BetterHelp Online Therapy will look at what you need and your emotional needs and match you with a therapist in less than 48 hours. And even if you don't think you need therapy, I know I've often talked to friends and family who think they didn't need it, and they are the people who often benefited the most. Getting therapy each week with BetterHelp is as easy as a few clicks on your laptop or phone. And there's a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/sidebar. That is 10% off your first month of online therapy at betterhelp.com/sidebar. Well, another interesting thing that, I mentioned, but Judge Azcarate noted this. She's saying the summons went to the house where apparently both of these men lived, father and son, one born in 1945, the other in 1970. There was no birth date on the summons. So to me, I'm thinking to myself, well, why even bring it up? And then they had the footnote to boot that said, look, we know this isn't grounds for a new trial or for the verdict to be set aside.
I love that that was put in a footnote, by the way. It was fantastic. It's something you do when you're like, we know we don't have a case, but, but this little footnote. But yeah, but I've had a summons come to me before, and I don't remember my birth date being on it. And I'm sort of glad now that it wasn't on it, but, it's like, don't put my birth date on a public jury summons. No, but they don't, as far as I know, at least in California, they don't come with birth dates on them. So they have your name and your address, and you fill it out. So I can't imagine he would have filled it out incorrectly. We have the questionnaire that the court pulled that was correct, and there really wasn't any mistakes made here. And then the point you made, Angenette, even if there was a mistake, they have to go beyond that and show that there was a violation of her due process rights and that this actually affected the outcome in some way, which they didn't even try to bother arguing that it did. They just said this mistake happened and therefore there should be a re-examination of the case.
I'm looking at this right now. Obviously, this just came in. It says, Judge Azcarate wrote this: a party cannot wait until receiving an adverse verdict to object for the first time on an issue known since the beginning of the trial. The issue has been waived. So she is saying, look, if you had a problem with this, you should have brought it up earlier, not kept it in your back pocket. That's basically what she's implying, because she's saying basically that the defendant and the plaintiffs had an obligation to make sure the information was requested. This was on them.
Totally. And, the thing is, well, you didn't like the outcome, so you're bringing this issue up now, but would you have not brought it up if you liked the outcome? That's really the suggestion there.
At the end, and this reminds me of that June 24th hearing, Elaine Bredehoff, God bless her, kept asking for things and saying, I want to address this in post-trial motions. I want a hearing. Judge Azcarate said, I don't need a hearing. We had a 6-week trial, and I've had this case for 18 months. We are done. And she said the judgment is final today. And she kept reiterating that and talking about how they had to post that suspension bond to appeal. And that's what the judge was ordering. And she puts in bold type at the bottom of the order, Mitra, this order is final. Judge Azcarate is done.
Yep, she sure is. And yeah, and you were in that courtroom. We weren't there. We didn't see it, but I did see you report it. And she was done then, and she's even more done now. So is this going to be the end of it is really the question.
Right. And I'm thinking, maybe they'll file some other motions. Elaine Bredehoff said she wanted to address this whole issue of the suspension bond in post-trial motions. Maybe there will be more. But I just don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I think the appellate court is the next stop. Mitra Ahouraian, thanks so much for making time for us and coming on to discuss this.
My pleasure, always.
And that's it for this edition of Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. Michael Deininger is one of our producers, as is Sam Goldberg. Bobby Szoke manages our YouTube. Kiara Bronson manages our social media. And Alyssa Fisher is our booking producer. You can find Sidebar on Apple, Spotify, Google, and YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. I'm Angenette Levy, and we'll see you next time.